this punctuation mark for sarcasm, this one for a rhetorical question, this one for a romantic statement, and this one for... well, you'll find out. Let's explore the punctuation marks we once had and the ones that never quite caught on. It's time for another Rob Words. Okay, lost punctuation marks. This is a big subject. Where the heck am I supposed to start? Well, how about there? This is not satisfactory. Having to use two punctuation marks at once like this, well, it's just so inefficient, isn't it? Surely there's a better way to flag up an exclamatory question like this. Well, I am not the first person to have thought that there should be. In 1962, an American ad man named Martin K. Spector shone a light on the problem in Type Talks, a publication he edited for the Advertising Typographers Association of America. I couldn't find that article, but it is quoted in this excellent book, Shady Characters. He used the example of Christopher Columbus's supposed first words on spotting what would turn out to be the Americas. He wrote that most historians insist that he cried, "Land ho!" but there are others who claim it was really "Land ho?" Chances are the intrepid discoverer was both excited and doubtful, but neither at the time did we, nor even yet do we, have a point which clearly combines and melds interrogation and exclamation. Now, leave aside the fact that Columbus probably didn't say those words in English, did he? Mr. Spector had a point, but he didn't just burden us with a problem. He brought along a solution.
So he and his wife Penny had an ad agency in New York.
Keith Houston is the author of Shady Characters and has done more research into this subject than just about anybody.
Apparently over dinner one night he announced to Penny that he was going to invent a punctuation mark, and he ran off to the phone and called their favourite art studio and said, "Is anyone there who can draw?" And they went into the agency and they sat and they hashed this out.
Martin K. Spector introduced to the world the ExclamaQuest, a clever combination of the exclamation mark and question mark. Of course, ExclamaQuest wasn't his only suggestion for the name. He also suggested it should be called the interrobang. Now, the middle of these three designs was the clear winner, with readers of Type Talks sending in their own suggested names. How do you like EmphaQuest? Not bad. Interropoint? Okay. The Ret, I'm not so sure about that one. It's like rhetorical. Or the exclarogative. In the meantime, Martin's idea was gaining national press, and interrobang was catching on as the preferred name for it. It's a mix, obviously, of interrogative, and bang is a printer's nickname for the exclamation mark / exclamation point. And then, just 4 years after Spector proposed it, a breakthrough. In 1966, as the US was preparing for its bicentennial, which was still a decade off, to mark 200 years of liberty from us dreadful Brits, the American Type Foundation commissioned a commemorative typeface. Designed by Richard Isbell, they unveiled Americana, Roman and bold. And just looky down here. What did they include? But the interrobang. Charged with a new legitimacy, surely this would be the making of the interrobang.
A couple of years later, in 1968, Remington Rand added it to a typewriter, or rather they made a special key that you could buy in a special type head. So you could choose another key on your typewriter and replace it with the interrobang.
For some reason, that was as good as it got. You can, over half a century later, still use an interrobang if you fancy. You can copy and paste it from somewhere, you can copy it from the Windows character map, you can press Control, Command, Space on your Mac and search for it there, or you can use its rather convoluted Unicode. Et voila! How about that? I suppose nowadays we might opt to skip the interrobang and head straight for an appropriate emoji. But which one? Our options are changing all the time, with the Unicode Consortium currently working on an updated list for smartphones. Thanks to this video's sponsor, Ground News, I've got a head start on knowing which emoji could be on the way. It says a draft list published by the consortium includes a pickle, a lighthouse, a meteor, an eraser, and a net. Ground News is a website and app that brings together news sources from around the world and helps you to understand the coverage. It's found 11 sources on that story alone. But the best thing about Ground News, in my opinion, is the information it gives you about the different news sources, including who owns it, a factuality rating, which I find enormously helpful when doing research, and its political bias. I'm also a particular fan of its blind spot feature, which goes out of its way to introduce you to stories that one end of the political spectrum isn't covering, be that right or left. I've been working with Ground News for ages now because I think it's never been more important to understand who your news sources are and whether they can be trusted. And Ground News gives you all the tools you need to do that. If you want to get the full story like I do, subscribe to Ground News using my special link. That's ground.news/robwords, or use my QR code to get 40% off the Vantage plan. Give it a go. Have a look at this lovely book. It's from the 1960s, and actually, this copy used to belong to a library in France. It's by a French writer called Hervé Bazin, and it's called Plumons l'oiseau, which means let's pluck the bird. The bird he's referring to is the plump turkey that is the French language. And what this book is a proposal for how to pull apart the way that it is written and introduce a new way of spelling it. One under which, for example, the word oiseau, bird, would be plucked of its unnecessary letters and simply written like that. W-A-Z-O. I could do a whole video on just that proposal. I mean, look how cool this version of French looks. But I am showing you this book just for the sake of 2 pages that are in it, where Hervé Bazin says that a new phonetic spelling regime reflecting how people speak should also take into account the way people speak. He uses the example sentence, il est beau, which means it's beautiful, or he is beautiful. He points out that you can say it's beautiful in a basic inquisitive way, just asking if it is beautiful, but also it's beautiful in a way that suggests you actually hold the opposite view. Likewise, you can say it's beautiful in a way that insists that it is, or it's beautiful in a sort of amorous fashion. It's a bit creepy when I do it. But Bazin reckons our current load of punctuation marks aren't up to the job of making these distinctions. So he proposes a crop of additional ones to sit alongside the question mark and exclamation mark, which he reckons should be kept. For the amorous "it's beautiful," or for any other sentence uttered with an air of romance or to express adoration, he proposes the point d'amour, the love point, which he explains as formed by 2 question marks which, in a way, gaze at one another and draw a sort of heart. It's gorgeous. I love it. Love point. He also suggests the point de conviction, the conviction point, for when someone is stating something they believe. It's an exclamation point transformed into a cross as a nod to religious conviction. I believe it works rather nicely. Conviction point. My favourite, or at least I think it's my favourite, is Bazin's point de doute, the doubt point. Check it out. Explaining the shape, he says, it's like you. It hesitates, it wavers before coming wonkily to its point. See what he did there? I like the look of it, but I think it maybe looks too much like a question mark? Doubt point? Now, much like his overall proposed spelling reform, dear old Hervé's proposed punctuation marks didn't catch on back in the 1960s. But I think recent decades have proven that he was on the right track. The modern use of emoji is almost exactly what he was talking about. Is this really any different to this? It's up for debate whether emoji are punctuation, but by Hervé Bazin's reasoning, they definitely are. And if an emoji tells you how to read the words that came before or after it, then surely it is. Now, I've deliberately held off on telling you about one of Hervé's innovation marks because it opens such an enormous can of worms. But let's talk about it now. It's this one. This exclamation mark with a wry smile was Bazin's point d'ironie, his irony point, a punctuation mark to be used to show sarcasm. Bazin himself said it was based on this Greek letter, psi, because what's better sound to suggest a sneaky second meaning than ps? He also likened it to the whizzing of an arrow delivering a razor-sharp barb. And it is just one of many historical failed attempts to create sarcastic punctuation. Way back in the 17th century, the English natural philosopher and vicar John Wilkins proposed a novel way to flag up an ironic statement using an upside-down exclamation mark. It's perfect. It's emphatic while indicating that things aren't quite as they seem. It also has the benefit of looking a bit like an I, the first letter of irony. Actually, it doesn't just look a bit like an I, does it? It looks a lot like an I. Could that lead to confusion then? Could you sarcastically order a macaron and end up with some macaroni? It's clear enough here, but handwritten? Maybe that's why it didn't catch on. It just made the end of every sentence look a little bit Italian. Next to have a go were the French, and a good century before, Hervé Bazin. In an article published in October 1841 in the newspaper Le Courrier Belge, the French-born Belgian Jean-Baptiste Ambroise Marcelin Jobard, that's too long for goodness sake, proposed his own punctuation mark. Check it out. It's a little upward arrow. He uses it to flag up his own melodramatic and sarcastic statements about war, such as furrows watered with human blood and covered with ashes yield the richest harvest. I don't know why I did that voice. He flanks that sentence with two of his little Christmas trees and with a helpful footnote. Ceci est un point d'ironie. This is an irony point. So you see, Bazin did not invent the name. Yet again, this one didn't catch on. But where Jean-Baptiste Ambroise Marcelin Jobard failed, could the French poet Alcante de Bram succeed? Alcante de Bram, weird name, right? Yeah, because that wasn't actually his name. It was an anagram of his actual name, the rather more conventional Marcel Bernhard. But conventional Marcel/Alcante was not. While Marcelin Jobard had gone so far as to publish an article featuring his point d'ironie, de Bram went a step further, publishing an entire book peppered with his own take on the same concept. He kicks off his L'Ostensoir des Ironies by immediately showing off what his mark can do by using his stylized backwards question mark after Director of Fine Arts. He then says, I am looking for the phenomenal oaf who boasts of directing the fine arts. His point is that art can't really be directed. It doesn't matter. Anyway, he tries to hammer home his mark's usefulness by dropping it in over and over and over in the book. As a result, it attracts greater attention than its predecessors. But have you ever seen anyone use it? Nope. Hold on, what's this? Ah, yes. Now, Alcante de Bram was not the first to think flipping a question mark might be a good idea. It's possible he even took inspiration from a much earlier usage. Way back in the 1580s, an English printer named Henry Denham started working with a backward question mark too. However, and I think this is arguably a better fit, he used it to show a rhetorical question. A question said for effect without the expectation of an answer. Clever, right? It's a question, but not really. Anyway, neither Denham's rhetorical question marker nor de Bram's irony symbol caught on. Are you starting to see a pattern with this video? The next to have a proper go was arguably Hervé Bazin, whose symbols we've already explored. So who came next? Well, the next major attempt would come this century, and this time it would take place in the Netherlands. Each year, the Dutch hold a massive book gala called the Boekenbal at the start of Book Week, and each time there is a theme. In 2007, that theme partly centred around irony. Thus, the CPNB, the Foundation for the Collective Promotion of the Dutch Book, commissioned a type foundry called Underwear, it's spelt differently, to create a new ironie teken, or irony sign. Underwear, not wanting to be caught with their trousers down, produced this. It is a wiggity-jiggity punctuation mark, somewhere in between an exclamation and a question mark, very similar to Hervé Bazin's point de doute. And it also suggests that things are not as they seem.
The thing that it has above, I think, most other marks is that it was designed by someone who's a typographer first and a writer second, as opposed to the other way around. And so it looks convincing. It looks good. It fits well into writing. It's visibly similar to, but distinct from the exclamation mark. So at least in terms of how it works visually, it's brilliant.
Do you think one of the reasons that sarcastic punctuation has never truly taken off might be that not enough of us want it? I think I might be of the opinion, shared by many, that it's the job of the writer to make their intention apparent without flagging it up in such blatant fashion. That's the art of sarcasm and irony. That's the fun of it. I don't want to telegraph when I'm being sarcastic. If you've understood me, you'll know. Perhaps that's why the final sarcastic symbol we're going to look at still hasn't taken the world by storm. In 2006, a father and son duo from Michigan named Paul and Douglas Sack set about solving the same problem that so many others had already attempted to solve. They did so by setting up a company called Sarcasm Inc. They say they did this after Douglas Sack was writing an email to a friend and was attempting to be sarcastic, and then it struck him that there was no way to do that. And so he thought, there's an opportunity. A business opportunity. To solve this problem, the Sacks produced the sarcmark, TM, written with a TM, because not only did they invent the symbol, they trademarked it. They treated their innovative curly-whirly punctuation as a product, initially charging people, desperate to be ironic but so dreadfully incapable of doing it clearly, $1.99 for a font that enabled them to use it. The sarcmark is now free and a charismatic presence on any page should you like to use it. But it received, let's say, a mixed reception. An unironically enjoyable read is this Guardian article written entirely in sarcastic prose with the title, The Rise of the Sarcmark. Oh, how brilliant. Maybe the author Tom Meltzer and I are being a bit snobby when we decry the need for a sarcasm marker. We at least seem to be in the minority. The internet age has brought a multitude of ad hoc ways of expressing sarcasm, whether that's alternating between upper and lower case, using HTML-style sarcasm tags, reverse italics, also known as ironics, or, oh god, hashtag sarcasm. There is clearly a demand for an irony marker, but is it likely to come in the form of a punctuation mark when we can just use these? I suspect not. But enough of the punctuation marks we never had. What of the ones we loved then lost? Because some of them are beautiful and our emails are uglier for not having them. Take this gorgeous little thing, the Hedera. Drawn to look like a plant, indeed Hedera is just another name for ivy, this was what was called a fleuron. Scribes used to use a range of florid little symbols to mark up their manuscripts. Here you can see them being used to separate off bits of text like titles without having to jump to a new line. Utterly delightful. Another defunct punctuation mark that leaves me all starry-eyed is this one, the asterism. Asterism is another term for a constellation. Both words basically mean a collection of stars. And I mentioned in a previous video that asterisk just means a little star, both in image. The asterism was previously used by printers to break up text into more manageable chunks. À part Monsieur de Bram deployed them liberally in the same book in which he attempted to introduce his irony mark. Look, so many stars. What a shame they have now dwindled to nothing, although you will occasionally still see 3 asterisks in a row doing a similar job. Crispy old manuscripts are littered with marks that we no longer use. More's the pity, in my view. Here's a revelation for you. You know how Spanish has this guy, the little squiggle that turns a n into a ñ? Did you know that English used to have that too? In Spanish, what that tilde, as the squiggle is called, is doing is replacing a second N. You can basically see it as one N on top of the other. The Spanish año, meaning year, originally had a double N. So the tilde is replacing an N. Now take a look at this English transcript of a 16th century play and check out how they've spelled consumed. See the tilde? And what's missing after it? An N. It's doing the same as the tilde does in Spanish, but there is more. In the same play, here's how some and come are spelled. With a tilde. But in these cases, it's an M that is being left off. How come? Well, that's because N and M have something in common. They are both nasal consonants. Try it. Make an and an sound and just feel how it resonates in your nose. The way the tilde is being used here is to tell you that the vowel it's accompanying should be followed by a nasal sound, an or an And here it is, being used in English. Now you could argue that that's an accent mark or diacritic rather than punctuation, but to that I say this. What is this apostrophe doing here? It's showing where a letter has been left off, and that is all that the tilde is doing in consumed. And with that, I think I have consumed enough of your time. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks also to Keith Houston for taking part and for all of his research into this topic. Can I just remind you that I'm doing 10 nights at this year's Edinburgh Fringe. Come join me for a wordy, nerdy hour where we're going to revolutionise the English language. I'll leave a link to tickets below. If you've enjoyed this video, I reckon you'll like this one next, and I'll see you over there. Until next time, take care.